From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello everyone, I'm Curtis Fuller and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Back in 2020, a rather unique artistic project took place along Plum Street in front of Cincinnati City Hall. Several talented artists came together to design a mural, and the street became their concrete canvas. The one-block mural says Black Lives Matter. It was designed following demonstrations in Cincinnati and all around the country sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minnesota while in police custody. Members of the group Black Art Speaks are coming together once again, as they have each year, in an effort to preserve their work of art.
This year will be our last year refreshing it because we won't refresh it next year, but in 2025 they'll get a new canvas to paint on, if you will, because they're going to replace this road. I'll say that it's energizing. Last year we didn't do a whole lot. We didn't do too many activities to bring people down. We just tried to get down here and get it done. But this year we're doing a lot more. But I think it just reminds us that we still have a ways to go when it comes to equality, and that equity in the arts, I did not know that it was what it was until 3 years ago, because I've been in corporate America the entire time, and actually knowing that their voice has been kind of muted as a result of processes that's old, actually is what it's all about. And that's how people come together. We talk about the arts, but we also just talk about what we want as a Black community and how we get there. We did a little survey, and only about 7% of the people know it's here, or paid attention enough to know that it's here. So we still have some work to do with that piece. But I still think people know, people who know they know, right? How I think it's changed things is some people they heard Black Lives Matter and they got frustrated and didn't dig it at all, right? And this softened it.
Artistic expression is often a bridge to social justice dialogue. Let's take you back to the concept for the mural. The artists were inspired by a poem and the vision of Alandis Powell to create a mural and a book that will preserve the project forever.
I'll say probably the first day we were down there, we started talking about how important it was going to be to write a story or a book just about doing this. So many times in particularly Black history, we don't know about it because it hasn't been documented. So we didn't know what was going to go on and whether it was going to stay there long or anything. So I think immediately we thought the concept was the right thing to do. But a lot was going on. And it was probably some months later when Danielle Jones, one of the lead authors in this, she reached out to me and said she wanted to write the book. And what was amazing about Danielle doing that is she also was the person I reached out to when I was looking for all the artists that now feel like family that I met that day that did the artwork. So it was always in the back of our minds. And then I think one thing is that when people were engaging with me afterwards, everyone would ask, you need to do a book. You need to make sure you do a book. And as I was looking through books and how to do it, I really thought a coffee table book would be best. And it gave the artists a chance to tell their story, not just in the art, but how they were feeling about this movement.
If art is reflective of life, then naturally the art that Black artists make are reflective of the Black experience. And it's an important conversation to have, it's an important history to understand so that you can kind of contextualize why we believe Black lives matter.
And it was one of those ask and kind of a nudge where it was like, who, me? You know, kind of looking around like, are you sure? But when I reached out and I asked Alandis and we were just talking through it, she said that there had always kind of been a plan to do it, but no one had approached her yet to ask if they could do it. And so being that I was that person that reached out to her, she said, absolutely. And so that's where the journey began. And for me, it was really important to give voice to all of the artists. I love people. I'm a community person. And for me, it's important to make sure that people's voices are heard. And so The first approach was to make sure that I talked with all of them, to make sure that I interviewed all of them, and to find out why the mural was so important to them, and then to find out what were the different design elements, what were the different unique things that they decided to put into each letter of the mural based off of their lived experiences. And so that's how it started.
Yeah, anytime someone asks about it, I do wonder, like, how did we go so fast? How did we make it happen? I think I answer that by the great people we were dealing with, people who ran to answer the call and help. We put together a quick plan, and we had to have a lot of trust. It was 17 artists in the beginning for each letter, I think 17. And then we had people who weren't lead artists, but was actually in charge of things. And then each team went and got people to join in. And then volunteers came to help. In the beginning, we didn't think we were going to use volunteers because what I found out about artists is that they're picky. And they wanted their teams. And then it rained. And for a couple minutes, I had a doom feeling, and then I remember just sitting on the steps in front of City Hall, and we were all had tried to cover it up with plastic, and it was raining, and it was really washing away. And everyone was looking nervous, and I realized everyone was looking at me because if I looked nervous, they were going to be nervous. And you know, just spiritually, all of a sudden, I remembered that we go through so much adversity. Why wouldn't it rain? And that we were still going to do it. So then we had to be open to almost anyone helping, which I think made it better. So it was really about 60, 70 people that helped us, that we know their names, we know they were part of a team. But then when you think about everyone who touched it, or people who came and helped clean up, it was hundreds of people that actually made it happen. But it was scary moments. It was a lot of scary moments. It's hard to believe that it's still there and that the city is still saying it with us, with their heart, Black Art Speaks, and that they're open to keeping it there.
Welcome back, everyone. Many cities all across the country embrace the concept of a Black Lives Matter mural. But unlike the effort here in Cincinnati, most of those murals in other cities have now faded away. More now from the visionary behind the project.
It's been one touch-up. We had to fix where it was defaced, and I think we did great that we actually incorporated that because everyone's voice matters, even when it doesn't agree with you, right? It brings us to a better place. So we incorporated some of the defacing that happened. Black Lives Matter is a movement, it's a prayer, it's a hope. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not just because it's on the ground. But I think strategically where it's placed, when you think about the people going in the City Hall every day, it takes Jan Michelle to say this. She's like, I get hyped every day when I go to work. And they make so many decisions about our neighborhoods, about our kids, about what we're going to do next. Keeping that at the forefront of their hearts is important, really, really important. So I'm impressed with Cincinnati because when you look around Ohio, there was only a few. I think Akron had one, Cleveland had one, Columbus had one. And I believe Columbus has ended up on the wall somewhat, but they're not there. Most of them are gone. So a lot of people have either wiped theirs away or the paint has wiped away. I love the fact that Cincinnati said, this is part of our character. This is who we are. We are going to help drive things to make this right. So that's what's important about it. It's not just the art, it's the message. I don't know if someone else would have grabbed on and did it, so I know that spiritually, that God placed it on my heart to do it. But a lot of people think that this was my first time to the game of social justice, and it wasn't. It wasn't the first time, just like it won't be the last. I've always been an advocate of social justice. I've always been an advocate of Black people, always, of, helping us find who we are and making it happen. So that wasn't new to me, but art was new to me. I like poetry, never shared it. I don't think I'm a great poetry writer or anything. It's really from my heart and soul, and it's my therapy. We want what you want. For systems designed to negatively impact our families to be eradicated. We want what you want, to truly see this as a land of opportunity. We want what you want, to witness our children grow into adults, to play with our grandchildren and celebrate as they graduate from high school and college. We want what you want, to walk into a place of education and know it is truly used to educate. We want what you want, for others to see the males in our lives as gentlemen with kind hearts and not as thugs and criminals. We want what you want, for others to see the ladies who look like us as beautiful and deserving of equal rights, just like the ladies in your life. So when I wrote it, after listening to James Baldwin, who was phenomenal, I wrote it so people in leadership could see it, what we wanted, right? And I put it on LinkedIn strategically for that reason. And I had people, I know CEOs call me about just, is that really what you want? Like, that resonated because so many people were saying, what do you want? And I just put together what I thought we want, and I needed people to know it's no different than what they want for their families. So I think that was one thing. But the timing, right after that, standing in front of City Hall with my son, who's a fireman, we were going through marching, and my husband, when I proclaimed that Black Lives Matter would be there, they giggled and thought it'll probably be there because they know once I say it, something's gonna happen. But what was huge to me was that we needed everyone to calm down, to listen with our hearts, and to quit yelling so loud. But to yell, don't get me wrong, I yell normally with my actions and not my voice.
We have witnessed the intersection of artistic expression and social justice many times. It can raise awareness and affect change.
I think the message that the Black Lives Matter mural sends out is an ongoing message. So I think it's done it, but I think it's still doing it. I think that whenever you create public art, I like to call these venues of vulnerability. So basically you've got a space where, folks will come up and they'll see what you're doing and realize that, man, I'm not an artist. I can't draw stick figures is what I always hear. But you also have people that say, I can't afford art. So when people come to the space and they're not artists, they usually feel a bit vulnerable because this is a foreign space to them. And when they do that, they have a chance to kind of talk to one another about, issues that may be a little uncomfortable in most settings. But I think through these conversations, we can knock down walls of bias. And if we had more spaces like this and people did that more often, I think we wouldn't have nearly as many problems in this country as we have now. I did the letter B, and I think it was God-breathed because, I chose the line from Alandis' poem, I want to raise my family in peace. And I think B being the first letter and having that content within the letter was a great inlet to the rest of the mural. So if we can all agree on one thing, even though people might not agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, you can agree with the fact that you want to raise your family in peace. And so I think if that's the first thing they see, it kind of gives them a little bit of space to read the rest of the mural.
I'm getting teary-eyed now. The project is beautiful itself, but to know that there are all of these people who put their heart and soul into something about social justice, to know that this is not something that they're just reading about, it's something that they've lived. We all want to be treated the same. We all want to be treated fairly and equally. There are human things that all of us desire that are not crazy and they're not too big of an ask, and that's everything that's in Alandis's poem. And so to actually go back and then to put additional words to that and to talk to the actual artist who came up with how they wanted that to be designed, it is emotional. To know that there are people who have an issue with the mere existence of people who look like me, it's all emotional. And so to be involved with such a project and to actually give voice to it, and then to create something that people can take home and have in their personal possession to be able to look through whenever they like to, it's emotional and it's beautiful. I think every year in February, when everyone focuses and they think about Black history, you know, you see the different shirts that say, I'm my ancestors' wildest dream come true, and I know that I am. I had a very, very close relationship with my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, and so to know that my great-grandparents and my grandparents always instilled in me that I could do anything that I wanted to do as long as I put my mind to it, and to know that I am now a part of Black history, like I am Black history, that is powerful. And it gives me pause, because going into the project, I knew that it was important. I knew that it was great. On this side of it, I think I stand back and I'm still yet seeing the weightiness of it. This is something that is going to live on for forever. When people take a look back at history and they say, well, what went into making that mural and where did it start from? To know that I'm one of the many people that will be affiliated with it touches my heart. And I don't even know if I have all the right words to put to it. I just know that it's important, and I know that it's changed my life.
I would be remiss not to talk about Stephen Smith, who was the graphic artist and designer that we partnered with. I mean, he had a vision for how he wanted the art. Alandis had a vision for the overall project. Danielle had a vision for the written word. And my question was, how do we pull that all together so everyone feels that their creative side came through in this book? But it also talked about the emotion around the making of the mural. We wanted people to feel it. The same way that my team cried when we saw that book, we needed to do that when we read the words that were tied to each one of those images. And so we did rework some of those images to say, it doesn't quite fit right now where it is. We added statements, because while it's a coffee book, it still has to talk about the statements. So we added pages that talked about Black Lives Matter. We added statements that talked about the emotions and phrases that were being used at the time. So it was important that we pulled it all together. And that was the key thing. And I will tell you, failure was not an option. Alandis is very clear. The people we surround ourselves with are results-driven people. And so we're not going to put out just anything. It has to be the thing that really allows us to look back 10 years from now and say, we still stand behind this project. We spent months going over that and rewriting. I think we went through 18 renditions of this book before we got to a point that we were comfortable. Not being a part of the original piece, if I was to give this to someone who had not been a part of it, would they have the same realization that I had? Hey, I feel like I was a part of the making of Cincinnati's Black Lives Matter mural. And I think this book actually does that.
I think one of the beautiful things about this project is how many people have been involved in it. So from the mural to the book to the next phases of everything that Black Art Speaks is doing, to see so many people come together, both people who have been individually and collectively impacted by a phrase, Black Lives Matter. We're not yelling it, we're not screaming it, but in Alandis's words, we're shouting it from our hearts. And to know that so many people feel the same way and they're trying to figure out, well, how can I be a part of what you all are doing? Not only is it moving, but it's something that speaks volumes in regards to who we are as a society. It speaks volumes to who Cincinnati is and what our character is. Things are not perfect. We're still a work in progress. There's always things that are yet to be done. But to know that this many people were able to come together in this moment and this time to say Black Lives Matter, this is something that's important to all of us. And it's not only something that we're saying, it's something that we're doing. I think that that's impactful. And now for people to actually have a book in their hands where they can read through and see everything that went into it is even more powerful. And I can't wait to see what comes next.
And finally today, when you talk to the folks involved in the mural and book project, they are inclined to tell you, although it speaks to a movement, they see it as a calling.
In all transparency, the poem in the beginning didn't have anything about guns. It had it in sprinkled in places, and it didn't have the arts. And so we talked about what was missing, and we put guns in there, gun violence. And then we put a line about art. And we all agreed, and then it changed it because in the beginning it was I want what you want, and then because it was a collaborative, it became we want what you want.
No one ever said that all lives didn't matter. What we are saying is that Black lives do, and that we want the same things that everyone else wants, and that there is nothing wrong with desiring basic human needs and desires. That is what we are saying. When you think back to the spiritual part of it, I think that all of us that have been involved in this project have been called for such a time as this. God knew who he needed to bring together, how he needed to bring them together, where he needed to bring them together, and what they needed to do so that people could hear the message. Not necessarily see them, but hear the message. And I think when you get beyond the people and you start looking into the heart of the message, that's when true change can actually start to happen.
You know, I'm a firm believer that every moment writes my story. So every interaction. So when I think about interacting on the phone, on a Zoom call with people I don't know about something that's important, and in less than an hour, they agreed on a plan, it's bigger than me, you know? It's bigger than me. I always say God knows what he's doing.
Well, that does it for the program today. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy.